Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Superintendent Thomas J. Douglas, and we are here at the Horsehead Central School District for the 22-23 school district budget and Board of Education elections, of which we have 3 seats. Tonight is Meet the Candidates Night, and we will start off with our moderators. Ms. Caitlin Odell and Catherine Kanirwan are going to be leading us through this, and they have some directions for the candidates, and then we will get started. And at this point, it is a student production. So thank you to all the candidates who are here, and good luck and have fun, and off we go.
Thank you, Dr. Douglas. So we are going to begin with your opening statements. We're going to go in the order that you appear on the ballot. However, once we get to the questions, it's going to basically go very similarly. It's going to go 1, 2, 3, then it's going to go 2, 3, 1, and 3, 1, 2. And we're going to repeat that process so everybody gets a chance to speak first. All right, so Mr. Christmas, if you would like to begin with your opening statement.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm at the age where I have to put on reading glasses. So, ready with the clock? Okay, so thank you, Caitlin and Catherine, for hosting us this evening. To my fellow candidates for coming out and everyone for attending. My name is Dan Christmas. I've lived in the district for 15 years, and I have 5 children, one of whom is a proud Horseheads graduate, and the other 4 are currently in Horseheads schools, 2 in the high school, 1 in the middle, and 1 intermediate. I'm honored to have served on the board for the past 6 years and excited about the possibility of being elected to another term. I believe we've accomplished many positive things for the district during the past 6 years. We've significantly improved our facilities to enhance the learning environment. We've passed budgets that, as you saw earlier, limited tax increases while preserving and adding services for students. We've made improvements to our curriculum through the hard work of our teachers. We've invested in social and emotional health at our schools, such as by adding social workers, and many other things that I don't have time to list here. I'd like to return for another term so that I can continue to work hard for the benefit of all of the stakeholders of the district and continue the positive momentum that we have in place as a board. I'm not a candidate who has run or is running based on any specific issue or agenda. Pure and simple, my goal is to do what I can to make sure that all of our decisions and actions are in the best interests of our students. I believe we need to recognize the role that teachers play in our schools and support them accordingly. I believe we need to attract and retain the best staff and administrators we can to keep our district on top. And I believe in investing in the district serves the community as a whole. I ask for your support and vote so that I can return for a 3rd term to the board to continue the hard work on your behalf for the best interests of our students, teachers, and staff. Thank you.
Mr. Faruqi.
Hello everybody, my name is Ozzy Faruqi and I'm running for Board of Education position to serve our community. My wife and I have been Horseheads residents since 2013 and we love the community and our schools. We are parents to a middle school student and our daughter will be entering the school system in the fall and they're sitting right there. I'm motivated to serve on the board because I believe in education and all the goodness that comes from it. My son is a student in the district, and I want to do all I can to provide him and all other students the best environment that they can get for academic and extracurricular success, thereby positioning them for further success down the road. One of my motivations to serve comes from a family history of educators. I was born in Pakistan, where my grandfather established and ran a primary school serving underprivileged children. My aunt, a lifelong professional educator, ran a chain of grade schools. I myself actually attended her school until grade 4. Let me tell you, it's a different set of expectations when your aunt is the principal. So finally, my wife was also an exec faculty at Elmira College until a few years ago. So because of this family background, I have deep respect for teachers and educators, and I strongly believe in the education system. And I believe the teachers play a critical role in molding our collective future. So I'm hoping that I can do my part to continue the tradition of serving in the education arena. If I should be so fortunate as to be elected to the board, I will work hard with the rest of the team to provide effective governance. I will listen to our key constituents teachers, parents, and students to ensure that their voices are heard, and I will partner with the rest of the board on continuous improvement to our facilities, athletics, academics, and extracurriculars while being fiscally responsible. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Odell Welling?
My name is Liz Odell Wheeling, and I have been in the district for 7 years. Much like Dr. Douglas said, my husband and I chose Horseheads specifically for many reasons. The number one reason was the school district. We now have 2 children in the district. We have our youngest will be entering kindergarten in the fall, and our oldest will be in 4th grade. Part of my drive to run for office this year was that I am a former teacher. I'm a teacher by education. I taught for 2 years in inner city Buffalo and made a transition to the nonprofit world shortly thereafter. But I have a love for the classroom and for our students and educators, and I want to be a bigger part in the decision-making process as we continue to make Horseheads a great place to be. In addition to my desire to be on the board, I currently serve as the Gardner Road PTO Vice President, where we focus on partnering our educators with our students and families to create a community of togetherness. In addition to that, I'm also currently serving on the Commissioner Advisory Council for Special Education, where we advise the governor in decisions surrounding special education across the state. Throughout those experiences, I've learned that there's a lot that the school district can do on this level, and I'd like to be a bigger part of that. I would appreciate you considering electing someone who's been in the classroom and also someone who wants to make sure that there's representation for individuals with disabilities across the board. So I think it's important for kids to see others that look like them. So as you make that vote on the 17th, consider voting for me.
Thank you. At this time, I have an opening statement from Ms. Corbett Holleran. So she opens with, "Good evening to our hosts, my fellow candidates, Superintendent Douglas, President Dale, and those in attendance this evening, as well as all who are viewing tonight's forum online. I'm very sorry that I cannot be there this evening to participate in the forum. Several months ago, I made a promise to my son and his family to be with them to celebrate a special event. I hope that you all can understand the reason for my absence. I have dedicated much time over the years to attending meetings and activities sponsored by the Board of Education. Tonight, however, I will honor my commitment to my son. I'm confident in my ability to represent the community's values as a member of the Horseheads School Board if elected. My career spans 30 years plus in education as a classroom teacher, faculty member, mentor, and advisor. I am a longtime proud resident of the Horseheads community. If elected, I promise to contribute my best efforts in helping the district provide our children the safest and best education possible in preparing them to be productive, community-minded citizens. Thank you, Mary Ann Corbett Holleran." So at this time, I'm going to begin with our questions. We have 10 questions tonight. You will have 1 minute per question to answer. And I'm going to begin with Mr. Christmas. Why are you interested in running for the school board?
Thanks, Caitlin. I'm interested in running for the school board because I think it's important to continue the momentum that we have in place as a board in the improvements we've made over the last 6 years. I had the good fortune of joining the board in 2016 and being reelected in 2019, and boy, 6 years went by quickly. But I'm excited and interested in being reelected to the board so I can apply the things that I've learned over that time period and continue to make the improvements that we've invested in. As folks can see when you drive around the district, we've made not only physical improvements and investments in our district, but we've made investments in the educational program, and I think it's important to sustain those. So my goal in running and hopefully remaining on the board for another term is to apply myself to sustain those objectives that we've had in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Christmas. Mr. Faruqi, why are you interested in running for school board?
So I'm interested in running so that I can serve the community. As I said earlier, My son is in school right now in the district, and my daughter is about to enter school. So as a parent, and like other board members, I have a vested interest in making sure that the school district continues to deliver the right education environment to our students with the academic and extracurricular activities. So my desire is to make sure that our kids have the best possible opportunities available to them. I want to partner up with the community, with the other board members, to not only continue the excellent work that's already been undertaken, but also to come up with new ideas to improve our opportunities for the kids.
Thank you. Ms. Liz Whaling?
I want to join the board for 3 reasons. The first one is that it was amazing to see how well the district came together during the recent pandemic. To see the teachers and staff get behind our students was amazing, and I want to be a bigger part of that. The second one is, like my fellow candidates, I want to connect with the community. I want to strengthen those relationships and make sure that those that are doing great things are connected with the school, because we're all a community. And the third one is I want to strengthen the relationships with the teachers and staff, because it's important that our teachers and staff feel as valued as possible, because they're the direct link to the future of our children.
Thank you. Mr. Faruqi, what qualifications and/or experiences make you an ideal candidate for the Horseheads Board of Education?
So there's multiple, and I'll start with first the education. So I have 2 master's degrees, and from that standpoint, I have professional experience leading teams in large corporations. I currently manage a team of 5 people, where we look at budgets, we look at strategies, and we look at plans for improvement at a corporate level. So from a professional standpoint, that's qualification, and what I think relates most is I currently serve on the board of a local nonprofit religious organization, where I've served as treasurer and currently I'm the president of the board. So I bring that direct experience working on boards and making decisions, making sure our strategies are developed, our budgets are developed, and we're hitting those targets. And that's what I kind of bring to the board.
Thank you. Ms. Liz Whaling?
I currently work for Cornell University, and part of the role that I hold there is to facilitate both training and peer-to-peer fundraising. Through those interactions and trainings, I've learned how to communicate really well with multiple partners, and how to engage community members that you wouldn't necessarily think need to have a seat at the table, but that really make a big difference. I also, as I mentioned in my opening, that I have been a teacher. I know what it's like to sit in that classroom, and I want to bring that perspective to the board, as well as my experience with the PTO and engaging many different families in events.
Thank you. Mr. Christmas?
Thank you. I think there are 3 areas I would highlight. And number 1 is the experience that I've had on the board to date. So having served on the Facilities and Grounds Committee, the Policy Committee, the Finance Committee, I understand well the operations of the district, the budgeting process, etc. And I think that those experiences make me a good candidate. But secondly, from a professional standpoint, I am someone who is responsible for a budget within a large organization, responsible for ensuring strategic goals are set and met, and leading and managing people. And then thirdly, and I think frankly my most important job is as a parent of 5 children, all of whom have attended the schools in the district and have participated in arts, extracurriculars, athletics. I have a vested interest in ensuring a good education for them and applying everything that I feel as a parent for their benefit in service of the board. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Odell Whaling? We are now in the 3rd year of the global COVID-19 pandemic. What are your thoughts on the pandemic in regard to our school?
I want to first talk about how we handled the inception and the beginning back in March of 2020. It was amazing to see how quickly we turned things around. Being a mom with a new student at that time, it was amazing to see both on a local, in our neighborhood school, Gardner Road, and then to see the district, how they handled it. It was amazing. It was definitely tough to watch staff go through the transition. There was a lot of things to balance at that time, and I think we made the best that we could out of the situation. Everything we can look back and say, hindsight, we should have done X, Y, and Z, but with the tools and the knowledge that we had at the time, I believe the decisions that were made were the right ones.
Thank you. Mr. Christmas?
My thoughts on the pandemic and its impact on the schools. I echo everything that my fellow candidate just said. It was an extremely difficult time. It's remarkable how the teachers of the district rose to the occasion and continued to handle remote schooling, how the administration of the district rose to the occasion. It was an unprecedented situation for all of us, so I have great appreciation for that. I think looking back on it, we have to recognize that, unfortunately, we did our best, but students were negatively impacted. There have been, there is learning loss that has to be addressed, and I think it's important the district do that through, for example, the Summer Learning Academy that we're planning. And I think we need to invest in additional social and emotional supports for students as they try to get back into the classroom environment over that time being remote. So I think we did our best, and we made the decisions we made at the time, and now we have to look for closing those gaps. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Faruqi?
So I think our schools did a fantastic job overcoming or going through the pandemic. I remember in March of 2020, my son's teacher brought material and dropped it off at our home. So hats off to the teachers and administrators. They did a fantastic job navigating the unknown at that time, and the quick adaptation of technology, delivering education over the internet to our students, and making sure that they were getting the most that they could given the circumstances. I do believe that because of the pandemic, there has been some performance degradation in academics for students. That is something we would have to overcome. And additionally, as Dan pointed out, there have been some mental health issues, psychological issues that I think we have to address as students learn to cope through this pandemic.
Thank you. Mr. Christmas, as a member of the Board of Education, where do you believe the district should head over the next 5 years? Are there activities, programs, educational strategies that you would champion as a member of the Board of Education?
So as a member of the Board of Education, the focus that I would have for the district over the next 5 years, take a couple of separate tracks. Number one, I think we need to continue the journey we've been on in terms of facilities improvement. We've moved ourselves into creating a learning environment that is suitable for the 21st century education. And so I think this part of our strategic focus is how we sustain and complete that process. That's number one. Number two, I think we need to take a solid look at the curriculum and at the performance of the district. I know we all know that Horsehead schools are great schools, but we need to make sure that we're continuing and sustaining that greatness. And I think we need to look at how the district has performed and make sure that we're investing in the educational side of the program to continue that growth over time. Those would be my primary areas of focus as a member of the Board of Education for the next 5 years.
Thank you. Mr. Faruqi?
So I will look at multiple areas, right? Starting with the capital investment project that's been going on for years, make sure that that continues and delivers the promises that it has for our schools, both from a facilities improvement standpoint, athletic standpoint, and so on. Also, as Dan pointed out, focus on academic performance. I think from the New York State Education Department data, we can do better in terms of our ELA and mathematics proficiencies at 7th and 8th grade level. So we could perhaps focus on those areas and get our students up to more students up to a proficient level. Thirdly, investing in our teachers and making sure that they're trained, they're equipped to deliver the best possible education to our students. And lastly, take care of our underprivileged and disabled students.
Thank you. Ms. Odell Whaley.
My first focus would be on the academics as well. I'd love to see more focus on special education supports as well as investigation into gifted education. We have some very talented students in our district, and I would want to make sure that they're being supported in the best way possible. The other things that I would look at is making sure that our staff has all the support that they need, as well as focusing on attracting staff to the district and then the retention of that staff, in particularly focused on special education support staff to make sure that our students have well-trained people in the room with them.
Thank you. Mr. Faruqi, describe your view of the role of a school board member as well as the relationship between the board and the superintendent. What is the ideal relationship between the two entities?
So I think in my opinion, the board is there as a governing body, right? And the superintendent is a partner for the board in terms of delivering the education to our students. And the superintendent basically is, in my opinion, the go-to person for the board to interact with and deliver our vision with the help of the staff of the district and the teachers.
Thank you. Ms. Odell Whaley.
I think the relationship between the Board of Education and the superintendent is one of the most important ones in the district. The board is there to help guide, but obviously the superintendent is the one that's the outward-facing voice. I think it's important that a partnership and a strong relationship be built between the board and the superintendent so that when things like a global pandemic pop up, it's a smooth transition and the trust is there that the right decisions will be made at the right time.
Thank you. Mr. Christmas.
I think the board and the superintendent's relationship is critically important. It must be one that's based upon trust, mutual respect, a positive kind of interaction, but they have very different responsibilities. So I look at the board as, like Ozzy said, the governing body. The board actually is responsible for very few things: setting the budget of the district and setting policy of the district. And then the superintendent is like the chief executive officer of a company. That superintendent administers all of the day-to-day activities of the district pursuant to those goals set by the board. And so the board is the voice of the community. The board ensures that the district responds to the community's desires and provides governance, but really needs to stay out of the day-to-day administration of the district and allow the superintendent's team and all the teachers to do their job, because they are the educators. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Odell Whaley. Please identify and explain one issue or area where you think the board has done well in the recent past.
Thank you. I think the presentation that we saw today of the budget is a perfect example of the things that the board has done really well. It's amazing to see that there's actually a potential decrease in the taxes. It's really important to see those things happen, and I'm glad to see so many community members here to have seen that today. I hope that it will be a very well-attended vote this year. It was amazing to see.
Thank you. Mr. Christmas.
I would say an area where the district has done well is in the financial planning and strategic planning around the capital improvements. And again, this is not just about building a stadium, but this is about improving our classrooms, our athletic facilities, our artistic facilities for the 21st century learning environment. And from speaking with my own kids who enjoy the new library, from my kids who enjoy the cafeteria, from being one of the thousands of Horseheads residents in attendance when we had that first Friday Night Lights football game and just kind of feeling the energy, right? we have passed these, well, the community has supported these projects, and we've done it in a very financially prudent manner, minimizing the tax impact, but giving us a 21st century learning environment to support the education of our students.
Thank you. Mr. Faruqi.
I would echo the same sentiments. I think the board has done a great job with focusing on the improvements to our facilities delivered on the stadium, and there's more coming down the pipe in terms of the facilities improvement at the various schools, so that our students can have the best facilities possible in a good environment that's conducive to learning, right? So hats off to the board for delivering on those promises.
Thank you. Mr. Christmas. Please identify one issue or area that you think should have been handled differently by the board, and explain what you would have done differently to address it.
One issue or area that I would do differently, I think if we could do it again, would be how we handled the remote schooling during COVID. I think we made the decisions that doing the best we could at the time on the information that we had at the time, but clearly that had a negative impact on students, many of whom struggled in that environment. And I think to the extent we could have, and again, the board was limited in terms of what it could do because of state law, but to the extent we would have had any flexibility to try to augment the online schooling with additional resources. If we could do that again, I think we could and should do that, because none of us knew the impact that it may have. Again, it was a first for all of us, but unfortunately it had a negative impact on some students. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Faruqi.
So my experience with the schools and the education provider has been positive, right? So I don't have any sort of criticism to put out, but what I will say is that, looking at some of the academic performance data, I think we can make some improvements in those areas, particularly when it comes to standardized test scores and New York State-wide exam scores, perhaps AP and honors type enrollment and getting advanced placement scores that students can utilize to get college credit. Those areas perhaps where we can provide some energy. But overall, my experience has been very positive so far. So,
Thank you. Ms. Liz Whaling.
I echo your sentiments. My experience has been amazing. However, I would love to see our district meet or exceed the special education standards. New York State as a whole is not meeting those, and I'd love for our district to be one of the ones that is. We have so many amazing people in this district. I think it's very doable, and I'd love to see effort focused on meeting those standards.
Thank you. Mr. Faruqi. How do you plan to blend or balance local decision-making against the mandates and guidance from the state and federal level? An example, COVID regulations, state testing, financial support, etc.
So as far as the state mandates and legislation goes, that's something that we have to abide by regardless, right? That's non-returnable. In terms of what flexibility we have within those guardrails, that's where I think we need to sit down and partner up with where we have opportunities. There's the board, there's a superintendent, there's a public. So my approach would be to take their inputs in, look at where we have opportunities, and work on developing a game plan to address those opportunities, set some milestones, set some targets, and monitor progress against those targets.
Thank you. Ms. O'Dell-Whaling.
I think it's super important to make sure that we're communicating often and clearly with the community about what's going on. Many times the frustration comes from not understanding that there are regulations and guidelines that come from on high, and that the decisions that were made were based within those guidelines. I think that educational piece is something that we as a board could definitely work on. There's a big learning gap because not everyone is reading all of those legislations and guidelines, so explaining that that's what's happening. Not necessarily putting blame on it, but actually trying to give context to why a decision was made.
Thank you. Mr. Christmas.
So there's definitely a struggle at times between state mandates and the desire for local district freedom or flexibility. And I think state mandates, laws are just that. They have to be followed, as was said. One of the things we can do as a district is advocate for changes to laws or rules that we disagree with through organizations. The school board is a part of the State School Boards Association. Other groups in the district are part of their own professional organizations. So one thing we can do is advocate for changes. And then secondly, in those areas where there is an ability to have some local control, I think we have to do our best to exercise that. And one example I would give is, although there are the state learning standards, within the context of those, we have worked hard to enable our teachers to write their own curriculum and to have some local flexibility in how that's put together, subject to those state standards. So finding that right balance, I think, is what we try to do.
Thank you. Mr. Faruqi.
I think I answered the question. Let's start with me.
How do you plan to balance?
Yeah, he was first.
Was he?
I'm so sorry. Ms. Odell Whaling, how are you educating yourself on the issues that are most important to the district and the school community?
That's a great question, thank you. I have been trying to connect with as many local groups as possible, talking to parents, having those random conversations about what's going well, what's happening, what are your thoughts. The great thing about me physically is that I'm easy to find in a crowd. So since my candidacy was announced, I can't go to Walmart or Target without a question coming up, which is great. I love to to get feedback. I think through the feedback that we can gain from our community partners, we can glean a lot. So that's what I've been doing so far.
Thank you. Mr. Christmas.
So I would agree. I think getting input from the community is particularly important for the school board. And my strategies for that include just what my fellow candidate just described. It's listening to folks when you interact with them out in the community, and I've had the good fortune to do that in schools, on athletic fields, in stores, at work, and it's just allowing people to share their views and being a sponge, absorbing that. I think it's also been important to, in my time as a board member, have the opportunity to speak to the teachers when we've toured the schools, to hear from the community when they've come to board meetings and presented their view. Particularly during COVID, we had some pretty contentious board meetings where people shared their comments, and while it was impossible to sort of give everyone what they wanted, it was really, really important to allow them to have their view to speak and to hear from them. So those are the different strategies I would utilize.
Thank you. Mr. Faruqi.
So my interactions have primarily been with parents of district students, just getting their thoughts on what's working, what's not, in terms of academics, in terms of athletics, what the priorities are for the community, in terms of what they want to see the school district focus on, and that's how I kind of get the temperature. Also, I read the newsletter every time it comes out, cover to cover, and that's how I kind of keep tabs on what's going on.
Thank you. At this time, we have 2 community member questions. So, Mr. Christmas, what role do you think rational politics plays in the local school district? National politics, sorry.
So the question is, what role do I think national politics plays in the local school board?
Yes.
So in my view, national politics doesn't play a role in local school boards. Local school boards are really apolitical organizations. Local school boards, in my view, exist to serve the best interests of the students of the district and to support the administration, the staff, and to be a voice for the community. And I know from being someone who watches the news that school boards became particularly contentious environments over the last 12, 18 months. And as I said a minute ago, I can understand people's frustration and their desire to kind of air their grievances in a school board setting. But I think that the involving politics in the school board, frankly, detracts from the educational mission. And I think they really should strive to be apolitical and act in the best interests of the students. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Faruqi.
So honestly, I kind of have to educate myself on that. I think the national politics probably has something to do with funding and allocating monies to states and from states to schools. But I don't have much depth in that area, so I can't really comment.
Thank you. Ms. Odell Welling.
And I echo Mr. Christopher's comments. It's definitely a slippery slope when we start marrying the two together, and I don't believe that the school board is the place to have those discussions, though we all know that it's built into the fabric of all of us. We all have opinions on many things, but I think we can all agree that we want the best for our students and for our district. So that's where our focus should be.
Thank you. Mr. Faruqi. When you speak of academic goals for the district, how do you factor in the children whom are not academically minded? What vision do you have to support those children in such a way that doesn't focus on the test scores even at a lower grade level before they are eligible for vocational programs?
So I think we kind of have to partner with the parents and kind of get their input on what works for those students and work with the teachers and come up with ways to keep them engaged at school and make sure that they're getting, if not academic, then some other sort of education that kind of develops them, keeps them engaged, right, and prepares them for future success.
Thank you. Ms. Odell Welling.
It's interesting, I had this discussion with my 8-year-old a couple weeks ago about why do we have to have standardized tests. She doesn't like them. But I think it's important to make sure that students understand that the test is a measuring stick for the teacher to understand where you need support, to understand what you need support in, not necessarily to say, oh my gosh, you don't know all of these things. It's more of a supportive environment that we're trying to foster. But I do think it's important. Dr. Douglas has mentioned the alternative education program in the middle school, and I'm excited to see what that turns into and what other avenues can be explored.
Thank you. Mr. Christmas.
Yeah, I think that it is important that we provide supports for all of our students, and we have to recognize that there are our baseline academic expectations that we have to work hard to make sure that our students meet, and if they need supports to do that, that we provide those. And then beyond that, there's a recognition that there are multiple kind of paths in life that students may take, whether they go to college, whether they serve in the military, whether they go into the workforce, that all of those are valued aspects of society, and that we support them in any one of those tracks. And I know at the high school level, it's a little bit easier because you can do that through, say, BOCE's career and technical education, if that's the track. At the lower grades, I think we can explore other opportunities like the alternative ed at the middle school. But the baseline is making sure that we meet the minimum standards and we provide the supports to the students that may need it in order to get them there.
Thank you. At this time, I have no more questions for you, but if you have any closing thoughts, now would be the time to share them. Ms. Odell Welling.
I would just like to offer, if you have questions or thoughts that you think are important for a potential board member to know, again, I'm easy to find, so please feel free to flag me down, and I'd love to chat with you.
Thank you. Mr. Christmas?
I would first just thank you, Caitlin. You've done a fantastic job asking the questions. And Catherine, thank you for keeping time. And for those of you who attended this evening, thank you for coming out. As I said, it has been an honor serving on the board for 6 years. And I sincerely hope to have the opportunity to continue that work And again, my sole reason in doing that is to try to act in the best interests of our students and represent the stakeholders of the district the best that I can. So thank you. I hope that you'll consider voting for me on May 17th and support the budget of the district as well by voting on that day. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Faruqi.
So thank you to everybody for coming out here and spending your time with us. Thank you to the candidates. Learned from you quite a bit this evening. Just want to recap that I am vested in the school district, care for the education of my son along with all other students in the district, and volunteering my time, or want to volunteer my time to serve the community. It would be an honor to serve on the board and make a difference in our kids' lives, right? So I would really appreciate your consideration in voting for me for the board. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, candidates, for sharing your knowledge and expertise with our community. At this point, this concludes our board candidates forum and meet and greet. So the board vote will be on May 17th in the South Gym from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. You have to be 18, resident of the area. That's all. Thank you. Oh, yes, the fourth candidate, Marianne, what's her? Corbett Hottering will also be on the ballot. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us online. Also here in the audience, candidates, best wishes. Good luck. You all could become my boss with no problem with one of 9. I think I'm the only one that gets 9 bosses, but that's great. You're all wonderful people. I would ask everybody, please come out and vote on May 17th from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. at the High School South Gymnasium on this year's 22-23 budget proposal as well as the Board of Education elections. Congratulations, and this concludes our Meet the Candidates night. Thank you.